There is a farming method that produced harvests so abundant, European governments tried to ban it, not because it damaged the land, because it made farmers too independent. In 1847, a Scottish chemist named James Johnston travelled through Belgium and documented fields yielding 3 times more wheat than English farms. The secret was not a fertilizer, it was not a new variety of seed, it was something farmers did with their waste that agricultural companies have spent 150 years trying to make you forget. This method costs nothing, requires no purchased inputs, and according to modern soil studies, builds fertility faster than anything the industrial system can sell you. Before the 1840s, every farm in Europe operated on the same basic cycle. Crops took nutrients from the soil, animals ate the crops, their manure went back to the fields. But something was missing. Harvests stayed mediocre. Famines struck every few decades. Then farmers in Flanders, the region covering parts of Belgium and northern France, discovered something that changed everything. They were not just composting manure, they were composting everything. Vegetable scraps, spoiled hay, street sweepings, night soil from chamber pots, even the contents of their outhouses. They mixed it all together in deep pits, let it sit for months, and spread the black, crumbly result on their fields. The yields were staggering. In 1843, a British agricultural surveyor named William Jacob visited Flanders and wrote that farmers there harvested 40 bushels of wheat per acre while English farms averaged 24. That is a 67% increase using the exact same crops and climate. Jacob tried to explain it away. He said the soil was naturally richer. Then soil samples proved Flemish dirt was actually sandier and poorer than English farmland. James Johnston published his findings in 1847 in a book called Notes on North America. He described Flemish composting in detail. The farmers dug pits 6 feet deep. They layered everything that would rot, human waste, animal manure, kitchen scraps, leaves, straw, even the soapy water from washing clothes. Every few weeks they turned the pile with forks. After 6 months, the smell was gone. What remained was a dark, sweet-smelling material that felt like rich soil. Johnston measured the results. Flemish farms grew 45 bushels of wheat per acre. Some fields hit 50. English farms using only animal manure rarely exceeded 25 bushels. The difference was not the amount of fertilizer. It was the diversity of materials and the time allowed for decomposition. But here is what made the agricultural establishment nervous. Flemish farmers were not buying anything. No imported guano from Peru, no bone meal from slaughterhouses, no Chilean nitrates shipped across oceans. They were creating fertility from their own waste, closing the loop completely. A farm that produces its own fertility does not need suppliers. It does not generate profit for anyone except the farmer. By the 1850s, the British agricultural industry was in crisis. Soils were exhausted from centuries of poor management. The solution should have been obvious. Adopt Flemish composting methods. Instead, the industry chose a different path. In 1842, a chemist named Justus von Liebig published a theory that revolutionized agriculture. He claimed plants only needed 3 elements: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Everything else in soil was irrelevant. This became known as NPK theory. Liebig's idea was brilliant for one reason: it could be sold. If crops only need 3 chemicals, you can mine those chemicals, bag them, and ship them to farmers. You can create an entire industry around chemical fertilizers. And they did. By 1860, British companies were importing hundreds of thousands of tons of guano from islands off the coast of Peru. Peruvian guano was seabird droppings accumulated over thousands of years. It was rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. It also cost money. Farmers had to buy it every year. The transition happened fast. In 1850, most British farms still used primarily animal manure. By 1870, chemical fertilizers dominated. Government agricultural boards published pamphlets explaining why the new scientific methods were superior to old-fashioned composting. They did not mention that the old-fashioned methods still outperformed chemicals in long-term soil health. Flemish composting did not just feed crops, it fed the soil itself. Modern soil science has confirmed what those 19th century farmers knew instinctively. Compost made from diverse organic materials contains thousands of beneficial microorganisms. These bacteria and fungi form relationships with plant roots, helping them access nutrients that chemical fertilizers cannot provide. A study published in 2018 by researchers at the Rhode Island Institute compared soil treated with compost to soil treated with synthetic fertilizers over 40 years. The composted soil held 30% more carbon, retained water better during droughts, and produced equivalent yields without any chemical inputs after the first decade. The composted soil also contains significantly higher populations of mycorrhizal fungi, which extend plant root systems and improve nutrient uptake. The same study found something else. Soil treated with synthetic fertilizers actually lost organic matter over time. The chemicals killed soil biology. Each year, farmers needed more fertilizer to achieve the same yields because the soil itself was becoming sterile. This is the trap industrial agriculture created. Chemical fertilizers produce short-term results while destroying long-term fertility. Composting does the opposite. So why did Flemish composting disappear? In the 1860s and 70s, European cities grew rapidly. The urban population exploded. Human waste that had once been composted on nearby farms became a disposal problem. Cities built sewer systems that flushed everything into rivers. The nutrient cycle was broken. What had been a resource became pollution. At the same time, the guano trade was collapsing. By 1880, the Peruvian islands were mined out. The fertilizer industry needed a new source. They found it in the Haber-Bosch process, invented in Germany in 1909. This allowed nitrogen to be synthesized from atmospheric gas using high heat and pressure. It required massive amounts of energy, but it produced unlimited nitrogen fertilizer. The Haber-Bosch process changed everything. For the first time in history, farmers could apply nitrogen without animals, without compost, without any organic matter at all. The chemical companies marketed it as liberation from the limitations of nature. What they did not mention was that it also meant liberation from independence. A farmer using the Haber-Bosch process had to buy nitrogen every year, forever. By the 1920s, Flemish-style composting had nearly vanished from commercial agriculture. It survived in home gardens and on small farms that could not afford chemicals. But the knowledge was fading. Younger generations learned that fertility came from bags, not from piles of rotting waste. Then something interesting happened in the 1970s. The organic farming movement rediscovered composting. But they did not rediscover the Flemish method. They developed simplified systems focused on plant waste, grass clippings, leaves, vegetable scraps. Very few modern composters include human waste or the full diversity of materials Flemish farmers used. There is a reason for that. Modern sanitation separates human waste from agriculture completely. It is treated as a biohazard, flushed into sewers, processed at treatment plants, and either incinerated or dumped in landfills. The nutrients are lost. Meanwhile, farmers buy synthetic nitrogen made in factories using natural gas. But a handful of researchers have revisited the old methods. In Sweden, a company called Aquatron developed a composting toilet system that processes human waste into pathogen-free compost in 6 months. Studies showed the compost contained higher levels of phosphorus and potassium than conventional manure and supported plant growth as well as chemical fertilizers. In the United States, the Rich Earth Institute in Vermont has been collecting urine, sanitizing it, and returning it to farms as fertilizer since 2011. Human urine contains 80% of the nitrogen and 50% of the phosphorus a person excretes. One person produces enough urine annually to fertilize 400 square feet of crops. The Institute has demonstrated that urine-derived fertilizer performs identically to synthetic nitrogen without the environmental damage. These are modern attempts to recreate what Flemish farmers did 200 years ago. Close the loop. Return nutrients to the soil instead of flushing them into rivers. The reason this matters now is that the industrial fertilizer system is collapsing. Phosphorus is mined from finite deposits, mostly in Morocco and China. Peak phosphorus, the point at which global production begins to decline, is projected to occur within the next 50 years. There is no synthetic replacement. When the mines run out, agriculture will have no choice but to return to cycling nutrients. Nitrogen fertilizer depends on natural gas. When energy prices spike, fertilizer prices spike. In 2022, natural gas shortages in Europe caused nitrogen fertilizer prices to triple. Farmers could not afford it. Crop yields dropped. The system's vulnerability became obvious. Flemish composting offers a way out. It costs nothing except labour. It requires no industrial inputs. It builds soil fertility instead of depleting it. And it works with any organic waste, kitchen scraps, yard waste, animal manure, human waste, anything that rots. Here is how the traditional method worked. Dig a pit about 6 feet deep and as wide as you need based on the volume of material you generate. If you are composting for a home garden, a pit 4 feet by 4 feet is plenty. Line the bottom with a layer of coarse material, straw, wood chips or dried leaves. This allows AIR circulation. Add materials in layers. Nitrogen-rich materials like food scraps, fresh grass clippings, and manure should be mixed with carbon-rich materials like dried leaves, straw, or shredded paper. The ratio does not need to be exact. Flemish farmers did not measure, they just alternated layers. Every 2 weeks, turn the pile with a pitchfork. This introduces oxygen, which speeds decomposition and prevents the pile from becoming anaerobic and smelly. If the pile seems too dry, add water. If it is too wet and starts to smell, add more carbon-rich materials. After 6 months, the compost is ready. It should be dark brown or black, crumbly and smell earthy, like forest soil. If it still smells like rotting garbage, it needs more time. The key difference between Flemish composting and modern methods is the inclusion of human waste. This is the part that makes people uncomfortable, but it is also the part that closes the nutrient loop completely. A person eating food grown on a quarter acre excretes enough nutrients to fertilize that same quarter acre. Without returning those nutrients, the system leaks. Soil fertility declines. Farmers must import fertility from somewhere else. Modern sanitation systems treat this as a problem to dispose of. Flemish farmers treated it as a resource to capture. They were correct. The nutrients in human waste are identical to the nutrients in animal manure. The pathogens are neutralized by the composting process, specifically by the heat generated during decomposition and the time allowed for breakdown. Studies on human waste composting have confirmed this. Thermophilic composting, where the pile heats to 130 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, kills harmful bacteria and parasites within weeks. After 6 months, properly composted human waste is microbiologically safe. For those unwilling to compost human waste, the method still works with kitchen scraps, yard waste, and animal manure. The yields will not match the Flemish results, but they will still exceed what chemical fertilizers produce over time. The agricultural industry does not want you to know this. A farmer composting their own waste does not buy fertilizer. They do not depend on supply chains. They do not generate revenue for chemical companies. This is why the knowledge was suppressed, not through outright bans, but through the slow replacement of old methods with new products. But the knowledge survived. In parts of Asia, farmers never stopped composting human waste. In China, night soil collection continued until the 1980s in rural areas. In Japan, human waste composting was standard practice until the 1950s. These systems supported some of the most productive agriculture in human history. The infrastructure is gone now, the knowledge is fading, but the method still works. Anyone with access to organic waste and a patch of ground can recreate what Flemish farmers did. The results will be the same. Abundant harvests, healthy soil, independence from industrial inputs. This is not nostalgic, it is practical. The fertilizer system cannot last. Phosphorus mines will deplete. Natural gas will become too expensive. Climate change will disrupt supply chains. The farms that survive will be the ones that closed the loop, that built their own fertility instead of buying it. Flemish composting is not banned anymore, it is just forgotten. But forgetting is not permanent. The method waits in old agricultural texts, in the practices of a few stubborn farmers, in the soil itself, which remembers how to come alive when fed properly. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like and share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.